Barton Simmons, welcome back to Tuscaloosa. I hope you're doing well.
What's going on? How we doing?
Oh, good. We're just, we're talking a little basketball in Tuscaloosa. Don't tell anybody.
Hey, this is the SEC's turned into a hoops conference. It seems like I gotta phone up and read up on who to pick in the tournament. I haven't had time to watch much basketball this year, so sounds like Tide got a squad though.
Yeah, I mean, hey, at least we're part of the conversation, which is, a little bit of an oddity, but we're getting accustomed to it. I mean, maybe we can be we're still a football school, but maybe we could be part-time basketball school if that's possible to be a part of the conversation. But I want to get your thoughts on something that you wrote earlier, and it's top 10 position battles, and it may not even be in the top 10. It's kind of like that opening couple of sentences there. When you mentioned the University of Alabama, you left it completely out of the top 10 position battles, Tua Tagovailoa and Jalen Hurts.
I did, yeah. I don't know if I'm naive in thinking this or misguided or what, but to me, gosh, I'd be shocked if Tua is not the starting quarterback next fall. And it sure seemed like and felt like Tua was the better quarterback. When he was in, and as much as Jalen Hurts done for Alabama and as talented as a player as he is, I just think given the tools around them and the receiver talent that they've accumulated there, and what Tua did in that second half, it just seems like to me that you got to play Tua as a starting quarterback, and I kind of expect, just sort of knowing who Jalen Hurts is and knowing what his situation is that it just feels like this is going to be Tua as a starting quarterback and Jalen Hurts as the backup, and they'll play him some, and he'll get some situational reps and some drives here and there to keep teams off balance. But I think it's going to be Tua's team in the fall, and I'm admittedly like that's sort of an expectation based purely on my observations and not based on talking to sources around the program. But man, it's going to be hard to convince me otherwise. So I didn't have that in my top 10 for position battles to watch, because I just think that position battle was won back in early January.
Well, see, and I think this is one of the reasons why I reached out to you. Certainly we want to talk some recruiting, but with that statement, because I'm like you. I don't know if I feel like that this is a true quarterback competition. Now, Nick Saban next Tuesday will say everything the opposite. He will say there's a competition, right, but that's what he's supposed to say. You're not going to say, walk in the first day of spring and say, hey, man, this thing's over. It's Tua's job.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, I think you're right. You're going to hear that it's a competition, and I think you'll probably hear it's a competition maybe even all the way into the fall or the summer practice, preseason practice. But as you mentioned, I mean, there's not a whole lot to gain probably by declaring a starter right from the jump, and I think you can get some advantages by keeping people guessing in terms of their preparation for you, in terms of making sure that the competition is creates meaningful reps throughout the spring and throughout the summer, and so I don't, while I don't necessarily think this is one of the more compelling competitions because I feel like Tua will be the starter, I still do think that probably it will be billed as a competition in Tuscaloosa throughout, because that's one of the real advantages that Alabama's been able to build through their success recruiting is everyone's job is up for grabs. And I think that they'll treat the quarterback position the same way. I just fully expect Tua Tagovailoa to be the guy that comes out with the job comes August and September.
Bart, coming out, and you've been covering recruiting for many, many years. Coming out of high school, out of Channelview High School there, the same questions that exist today in 2018, are those similar to the questions that you had Jalen Hurts coming out as a quarterback out of Channelview? Is those same questions there that you have now that was back then, or did you think he would be better? Did you think he'd be about the same? What did you think about Jalen coming out of high school?
Well, I tell you, I like Jalen. I mean, we had him as our number one dual threat quarterback in the country. We had him ranked higher, I think, than anybody else in the industry. I liked him. We really liked him. I had a chance to see him that year at the Elite 11 finals, which is sort of the camp that you get to where they have 24 guys, and at that year they were narrowed it down, I think, to 18. And so, so I saw him up close and really liked him even as a passer. And I think I've said to you before how impressed I was with his demeanor and mentality and approach. And I think, if anything, I mean, you're always a little bit surprised when a freshman can go undefeated and even win a starting job at quarterback. It just typically takes a while. So I was a little bit surprised that the success happened as quickly as it did. I wasn't surprised to see the success come. Honestly, one of the things I think I've been a little bit more surprised about is the fact that there wasn't a bigger leap from freshman to sophomore year as a passer. Because I think he's got the tools to be a really successful passer. I think he's got, he didn't come in as this guy that just needed to was just really raw and just needed to start from scratch and build himself back up as a thrower. Like, I think he had a lot of the fundamentals from a footwork standpoint, delivery standpoint, just needed to polish it up and get some reps and that kind of thing. And the fact that it felt like he was really the same guy year two as year one as a passer was surprising to me. And I think that's one of the more interesting things to follow here is, does that, is he at his ceiling? Is there no more improvement to come on that end? Because, at this point now, I mean, again, he may not get quite as many reps at next fall. And I think he got into one of the more unique, instinctive passers that we've seen come out of high school in a long, long time to compare him against. So I've been interested and in a little bit, I'd say, disappointed that there wasn't a bigger leap year one to year two on that front.
We're talking to Barton Simmons, national college football writer, CBSSports.com. We're talking about an article that he penned right there on CBSSports.com about the top 10 position battles to keep an eye on this college football spring practices. We'll work our way to basketball a little bit later. But, Barton, is there a competition on this Alabama football team that you are keeping an eye on that maybe didn't make your top 10 but would still grab your attention maybe on the outside of the top 10 looking in?
Well, I mean, how about the defensive back where they got 5 guys that are about to go in, top 3 rounds? It's just a loaded defensive backfield that's heading on to the next level. And where do they backfill there? I'll be really interested to see which of the newcomers can make the biggest and earliest and impact in that secondary. From an early enrollee standpoint, Savion Smith's the only one that's on campus. But I really believe in some of the high school kids that are coming in. I mean, Pat Surtain Jr., Jalen Armour Davis out of Mobile, I think Josh Jobe. I think those are 3 guys right there really even Eddie Smith. I think that there's 4 DBs that go into most college football programs in the country, and if there's a position, if there's sort of a room for them to compete, I think those are 4 guys in this class that are ready to compete for that job and play right away. They come in prepared. I mean, Josh Jobe had to go to prep school because he was too old to be eligible in Florida. So he's not only is he there from a physical standpoint, a maturity standpoint, he's coming in as a 19-year-old. So I just will be interested to see, I think, and some of the guys that have been redshirting and kind of waiting in the wings in that defensive backfield room, at that secondary room. Curious whether those guys can emerge. So I'm very interested in the secondary, and I think Nick Saban's got a great track record developing those guys. But who's gonna flash? Who's gonna emerge? Because there's always a next man up mentality, but I think there's a lot of unknown here in this secondary battle. What
do you get from Gardner Minshew? I know you listed him a couple of days ago on CBSSports.com as far as a grad transfer. What do you think he'll provide Alabama?
I think if he's on the field, something terribly wrong has happened, and that's not a knock on him as a player, because that's another kid. He was a good player in high school, and he had was a good player in junior college, and he's had a pretty good career at ECU. But that's I think it was interesting to me that he chose Alabama, and because I don't see a way onto the field at Alabama, and there certainly were places he could have gone where he could have competed for a starting job. But I think when you're looking at your quarterback room and you're looking at potential transfers and you got to have some bodies, and not only you got to have some bodies in case of injury or in case they have to play, but for just being able to give your defense a good look, being someone that can be in that room and push that room and get everybody better. I think that's sort of the hope for him, and I think Gardner, for his part, seems to want to be a college coach and wants to be around the game. And so you think he's going to take that approach and study the game and be a professional in the way he takes his day-to-day preparation. And I think all those things are things that a locker room is going to be really improved from. And so to me, he's the type of guy that is going to help you behind the scenes much more than tangibly on the field.
Barton, you also wrote about Nick Saban overhauls the entire Alabama coaching staff, but then asked the question, is it better? Is it better, as you've talked about there on CBSSports.com?
I think on paper, it's probably hard to say that it's better because you're losing Jeremy Pruitt, who's a national championship defensive coordinator 2 times over. You're losing Burton Burns, and I know he's still in the program, but he's got as good of a track record at the running back position as any coach in football. But I think what it is, and I think again that's just talking about purely what we know and what's on paper. But I think part of the reason you can kind of speculate, hey, is it better? Is there is a lot of reason for real optimism with this staff in terms of the future, because I feel like there's some young energy coming in. Guys like Josh Gaddis is one of the sort of the real young stars in the profession right now. Pete Golding has apparently just got an unbelievable reputation and just absolutely knocked his interview out of the park with Nick Saban. You got Jeff Banks coming in, who's been a star recruiter for Texas A&M. So you have all these guys coming in that I think the additions to the staff, where in a lot of cases in the past, Nick Saban has sort of rehired guys that have sort of circulated around the SEC and just sort of know their way around, or hired a name that's sort of kind of a retread coach who's established but not necessarily an upside play. I think there's some real upside hires here, and so I think that 4 years from now, I think we could be looking around and Pete Golding could be one of the real hot names in the country. Josh Gaddis could be a head coach somewhere. These are the type of guys I think that Nick Saban's hired, and obviously you got a guy like Tosh Lupoi, who I think has been an unbelievable recruiter for Nick Saban, but is unproven as a defensive coordinator. I did think it was just sort of coincidentally, 3 years experience under Nick Saban. Now he's the D coordinator. Kirby Smart got his D coordinator hires under Nick Saban after 3 years of experience coaching under him. So, there's precedent for, inexperience to beget some real success here with the hires that they've been able to bring in.